Djibouti Showdown. China's first overseas military base attempts to control African waters. USS America amphibious assault ship arrives with one message: this strait stays open. This is the confrontation that determines whether Chinese military expansion succeeds beyond their coastline or fails against American power projection. The Chinese People's Liberation Army support base in Djibouti represents China's first permanent overseas military facility. They invested billions building infrastructure to support naval operations in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. The base hosts Type 065D destroyers, submarines, marines, and comprehensive surveillance systems. Chinese military planners view this base as proof they can project power globally, just like America. They're about to discover that building bases is easy compared to operating them effectively against adversaries with decades of expeditionary warfare experience. The Bab-el-Mandeb Strait connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden and Indian Ocean, 30 kilometers wide at the narrowest point. Approximately 6 million barrels of oil transit daily heading toward Europe. Chinese forces from Djibouti base begin restricting passage, claiming security concerns and maritime regulations that international law does not support. Shipping companies face delays. Insurance rates spike. The global economy feels the pressure. American response becomes inevitable when diplomatic protests achieve nothing and Chinese restrictions tighten. Navy Power TV takes you inside the operation that proves Chinese overseas bases cannot achieve their strategic objectives when facing American amphibious ready groups with comprehensive combat capability and clear authorization to restore freedom of navigation by force. USS America LHA-6 leads the amphibious ready group into the area. This is America-class amphibious assault ship displacing 45,000 tons and carrying 20 F-35B Lightning II stealth fighters. Unlike traditional carriers, amphibious assault ships are designed for expeditionary operations in contested littoral environments exactly like this scenario. The F-35B vertical takeoff capability means the ship can launch fighters without catapults or arresting gear. The Marines aboard provide ground combat capability if needed. This is comprehensive power projection in compact package, specifically designed for situations where full carrier strike groups might be excessive, but significant combat power is absolutely necessary. Which capability makes USS America ideal for this mission? A. F-35B stealth fighters. B. Marine Expeditionary Unit. C. Smaller profile than supercarrier. Comment your answer. Chinese Type 052D destroyer Kunming monitors American approach from position near Djibouti base. This is modern destroyer with phased array radar, vertical launch systems carrying HQ-9 air defense missiles, and YJ-18 anti-ship missiles. On paper, the Type 052D represents capable surface combatant. In practice, it faces American amphibious group with superior sensors, more experienced crews, and F-35B fighters that Chinese radar systems struggle to detect and track effectively at useful ranges. The Chinese destroyer activates its Type 346A radar, attempting to establish tracking solution on approaching American vessels. The Americans detect the radar emissions immediately. Electronic warfare systems aboard USS America and escort vessels begin corrupting Chinese radar returns with jamming and false targets. The Type 052D radar operators see cluttered displays full of contacts they cannot resolve into accurate targeting solutions. This is the electronic warfare advantage that decades of American investment creates against adversaries with less mature countermeasure technology. Stay with me, because what happens next reveals why F-35B from amphibious ships changes power projection calculus and gives America capabilities that China cannot match with their current naval aviation technology and carrier operations experience. 20 F-35B fighters launch from USS America in vertical takeoff mode. The Chinese Type 346A radar detects some aircraft at reduced range but cannot maintain continuous tracking against low observable targets, employing tactical maneuvers and electronic countermeasures. Chinese J-15 fighters scramble from temporary deployment at Djibouti airfield, attempting to intercept American aircraft. These fourth-generation fighters face same problem their counterparts faced in Taiwan Strait scenario. They're blind against adversaries they cannot effectively detect until American weapons are already in flight. F-35B fighters employ beyond visual range tactics that negate Chinese numerical advantages through superior stealth and sensor fusion. AIM-120D missiles launch before Chinese pilots achieve radar locks on American aircraft. 3 J-15 fighters are destroyed. The survivors retreat to Djibouti airfield. Chinese air cover evaporates within 15 minutes of engagement. The strait approaches remain contested, but Chinese ability to enforce restrictions just collapsed when their air power proved inadequate against American stealth technology, operated by well-trained pilots with clear tactical doctrine for employing fifth-generation capabilities. Navy Power TV examines why this matters beyond immediate tactical success. China built overseas base specifically to project power in region, where they lack the operational experience and technological maturity to sustain operations against determined American opposition, backed by superior capabilities. The Chinese base at Djibouti launches drone swarms attempting to overwhelm American defenses through quantity. Dozens of expendable UAVs carrying small warheads head toward USS America. This is the same saturation tactic that failed against American destroyers in Red Sea, but Chinese commanders apparently believe different results are possible with more drones. They're wrong. American defensive systems were specifically designed to defeat exactly this threat profile through layered engagement and directed energy weapons. USS America activates defensive systems including CRAM point defense missiles and electronic warfare that defeats drone guidance systems. The escort destroyers engage drones at longer range with SM-2 missiles and 5-inch gunfire. Phalanx CIWS systems create close-in defensive barrier. The drone swarm is systematically destroyed without single drone reaching weapons release range. Chinese commanders watch another expensive attack achieve zero results against American defenses that make asymmetric warfare economically unfavorable for attackers. How many F-35B can USS America deploy compared to Chinese Djibouti-based aircraft? A. Equal numbers. B. America has advantage. C. China has advantage. Answer at end. The reality is USS America carries 20 F-35B, while Chinese Djibouti base hosts approximately 12 J-15 fighters at any given time. American advantage in both quantity and quality of aircraft creates air superiority that Chinese cannot contest with their current deployment. More importantly, American pilots have vastly more flight hours and combat training than Chinese pilots operating from austere overseas base with limited support infrastructure. Quantity versus quality reaches conclusion when quality includes both better technology and trained operators. Comment Q or L. American submarines operate in the approaches monitoring Chinese submarine activity. USS John Warner. Virginia-class attack submarine tracks Chinese Type 039 submarine attempting to position for potential attacks on American vessels. The Chinese submarine employs decent quieting technology for diesel-electric boat, but faces American submarine with superior sonar systems and acoustic advantage that allows tracking without being detected in return. The underwater dimension belongs entirely to the Americans through technological superiority and crew experience that Chinese submarine force cannot match with their current training and operational deployment patterns. Chinese shore-based anti-ship missile batteries at Djibouti prepare to engage American vessels. YJ-62 cruise missiles with 400-kilometer range represent serious threat in theory. In practice, they face the same problems as other Chinese missile systems. Targeting depends on sensors that American electronic warfare corrupts. Flight paths must penetrate defenses specifically designed to defeat cruise missiles, and the weapons themselves lack the sophistication to overcome American countermeasures through adaptive guidance or advanced seeker technology. If you believe amphibious assault ships with F-35B represent the future of American power projection, type Navy Power TV right now. American strike packages target Chinese military installations at Djibouti base. F-35B fighters employ GPS-guided small-diameter bombs against radar installations, communications facilities, and ammunition storage areas. The strikes are precisely calibrated to destroy military capability while avoiding civilian infrastructure and international areas of the base. Chinese air defense systems attempt to engage but cannot achieve targeting solutions against aircraft they barely detect and cannot track continuously through stealth and jamming. American munitions impact with precision that demonstrates not just technological superiority, but operational experience in planning and executing strikes that achieve objectives while minimizing collateral damage. Chinese defensive systems prove inadequate against American offensive capabilities, employed by experienced crews with comprehensive operational doctrine. The Djibouti base facilities sustained significant damage. Radar systems destroyed, communications degraded, weapons storage compromised. Chinese ability to monitor shipping or threaten vessels transiting the strait has been eliminated through systematic American strikes that exploited Chinese defensive weaknesses and limited combat experience, operating overseas base under actual attack conditions. Navy Power TV reveals the strategic lesson Chinese military leadership must absorb. Building overseas bases requires more than construction and equipment deployment. It requires operational experience and technological maturity to defend those bases against sophisticated adversaries who will exploit every weakness in defensive coverage and operational procedures. The strait reopens to unrestricted commercial shipping 48 hours after American intervention began. Chinese forces at Djibouti base are combat ineffective. Their restrictions on shipping cannot be enforced. Their attempts at area denial failed against American capabilities specifically designed to defeat such strategies. International shipping resumes normal operations with insurance rates returning to baseline as the threat level drops to negligible. Regional nations observe this confrontation with great interest. The African Union sees Chinese military presence failing to achieve stated objectives. Regional powers recognize that Chinese bases do not provide the security or stability that Chinese diplomats promised when negotiating base access rights. This undermines Chinese influence throughout Africa as nations reconsider relationships with power that cannot deliver on military commitments when challenged by determined opposition. The economic implications extend beyond immediate shipping. Chinese Belt and Road investments throughout Africa depended partly on perception that Chinese military could protect those investments and Chinese economic interests. This operation demonstrated that Chinese military cannot project power effectively beyond their immediate coastline when facing American opposition. International investors will factor this into decisions about Chinese versus American-backed projects throughout developing regions where security guarantees matter for long-term investment decisions. Which technology proved most decisive? F-35B stealth, electronic warfare, or submarine superiority? Drop your assessment. Technology supremacy confirmed. USS America with 20 F-35B defeats Chinese base with 12 J-15 and comprehensive shore defenses. That's the answer to our quiz. American advantage in both quantity and quality of aircraft, combined with superior training and operational experience, creates dominance that Chinese cannot overcome through base infrastructure or weapons deployments alone. Can China develop capability to defend overseas bases against American opposition? Current evidence suggests not within relevant time frame. Their technological gaps in stealth aircraft, electronic warfare, and operational experience require decades to close. Building bases is quick. Developing the capabilities to operate and defend those bases effectively takes generations of institutional learning and technological development that cannot be accelerated through procurement alone. The F-35B proves its value as power projection platform beyond what traditional carriers provide. The vertical takeoff capability allows operations from smaller ships with greater operational flexibility. American amphibious assault ships can operate in areas where supercarriers might be vulnerable or diplomatically inappropriate. This flexibility creates strategic options that adversaries cannot match with their current naval aviation technology or carrier operations experience. Future conflicts will likely see increased employment of amphibious groups with F-35B for scenarios requiring significant combat power without full carrier strike group commitment. The expeditionary warfare model that America refined through decades of operations proves superior to base-centric model that China attempts to replicate. Mobility beats fixed infrastructure when facing adversary with strike capability to destroy bases. Experience beats facilities when quality of personnel determines operational outcomes. American model of projecting power from sea using well-trained forces with superior technology defeats. Chinese model of building impressive bases, staffed with personnel lacking comparable training, and equipped with systems that cannot perform effectively against American countermeasures and combat capabilities. What's next for Chinese overseas expansion? This operation demonstrates the limits of Chinese military power projection. Future base developments will face increased scrutiny and resistance from nations that recognize Chinese cannot provide security guarantees when American interests are engaged. The failure at Djibouti reverberates throughout Chinese strategic planning for global military presence. The operational lessons from this engagement inform broader understanding of expeditionary warfare requirements. Chinese military invested heavily in building impressive base infrastructure at Djibouti, with modern port facilities, aircraft parking areas, maintenance hangars, and accommodation for thousands of personnel. But infrastructure alone proves insufficient when the personnel lack combat experience, and the weapon systems cannot perform effectively against technologically superior adversary. American forces operating from ships rather than bases demonstrated superior operational flexibility and combat capability through decades of institutional knowledge about expeditionary operations. The Marine Expeditionary Unit aboard USS America provided capability that Chinese base lacked, despite larger infrastructure and more permanent facilities. American Marines train continuously for expeditionary operations in contested environments. They possess equipment and doctrine refined through multiple combat deployments across various theaters. Chinese Marines at Djibouti base have impressive parade ground appearance, but lack the combat experience and institutional knowledge that makes American Marines effective in actual operations against determined opposition. The electronic warfare dimension of this engagement deserves particular attention. Chinese invested in sophisticated jamming equipment and cyber warfare capabilities at their Djibouti facility. Those systems proved inadequate against American countermeasures developed through decades of electronic warfare evolution and operational testing. American systems operate across broader frequency spectrums with more adaptive waveforms and better signal processing that defeats Chinese jamming attempts while successfully corrupting Chinese sensors and communications. This electronic warfare advantage compounds other American technological leads to create overwhelming information superiority. The logistics implications matter enormously for sustained operations. USS America operating from sea can remain on station indefinitely through underway replenishment from combat logistics force ships. Chinese Djibouti base depends on resupply from mainland China through vulnerable sea lines of communication that American submarines could easily interdict if conflict escalated. American expeditionary model proves more sustainable than Chinese base model when facing adversary capable of threatening supply lines and isolating overseas facilities from home support. Regional diplomatic fallout from this engagement shifts African security calculations. Multiple African nations negotiated with China about potential base access or military cooperation agreements based on Chinese promises about security provision and economic development support. Those negotiations will be re-evaluated now that Chinese military demonstrated inability to defend even their existing base against American opposition. Nations seeking genuine security partnerships will favor American military cooperation over Chinese alternatives that prove hollow when tested against actual threats. The cost-benefit analysis for Chinese overseas base strategy becomes unfavorable after this engagement. Djibouti base represents multi-billion-dollar investment in construction, equipment, and personnel. That entire investment proves incapable of achieving strategic objectives when American forces intervene. Future Chinese base proposals will face much harder cost justification when leadership must explain why additional billions should be invested in facilities that cannot perform their intended missions against primary adversary they were designed to deter or defeat. Subscribe to Navy Power TV, where elite naval power meets cutting-edge technology, Improving amphibious assault ships with F-35B represent flexible power projection that defeats adversary bases and area denial strategies through stealth aviation and comprehensive combat capabilities that emerging powers cannot match with current technology or operational experience. Superior fleets, advanced weapons. Hit notification for more analysis showing why American expeditionary warfare capabilities remain unmatched across every theater and operational environment, where adversaries attempt to challenge freedom of navigation or international commerce through military force that proves inadequate against American responses.